What's going on, traders? Welcome back to another week. Welcome back to another Money Monday, and welcome back to another year. It's been a pretty crazy kickstart to 2024, but today what we're going to do is we're going to jump into QQQ. We're going to talk about where the price is currently at, what's going on, and where we expect it to go based on the technicals. So let's go ahead and jump into my share screen and jump into the charts and go over what we are expecting. So looking at QQQ here, we're looking at the daily chart. Let me go ahead and grab a drawing tool so that we can go over everything together. The first thing right off the bat that we're seeing, so last week, beginning of 2024, we saw a fairly wild sell-off happening, right? So we saw for the last 5 days, just straight selling right from the peak. And you might be wondering, well, why did it start selling off at that particular point? Why was that a part of the reversal, right? So for that, we're going to have to go back a little bit and zoom out. And we're going to do that right over here. Actually, you'll probably see it better on a weekly chart. So on a weekly chart, right back here, let's go ahead and grab this drawing tool again. So right over here, what we saw was right back in October of 2021, actually, we saw a resistance at pretty much that same exact zone, that 410, 412 zone. And when we did recover, we came back up to that same exact resistance from what, 3 years ago. And we actually saw a resistance happening there as well. So that's exactly why we saw that resistance happening and why we saw that pullback happening when we did. Now, jumping into a little bit of a closer view for you guys to see, this is a weekly chart. So that's just to give you guys an idea as to why we saw the resistance where we did, right? And that's all based off of previous resistance levels, which is something that we've gone over with the team. We've gone over on this channel quite a bit. So that's a very common technical indicator that you should be paying attention to when you are doing some technical analysis. So jumping into a daily chart, something a little more clear in terms of doing some TA on a weekly basis, right? So for something for this week, we're looking at the daily chart. We're going to jump into a 4-hour chart as well. But looking at the daily chart, we're going to start diving into deeper technicals, right? We're going to talk about the exponential moving average, the MACD. We're going to talk about the RSI, where these levels are at, some of the support and resistance levels that are currently existing in that zone that we have been trading in for the last week or so, rather than the last 2-3 years, right? So looking at the first thing that we're going to be looking at is going to be this blue line, which is the exponential moving average. And so what we saw today was we saw a break above that. That is an indication that the market is actually bullish and it is starting to push up to the upside, right? So that is our first kind of, confirmation that, the market is bullish, that we might be wanting to look into a long side or a long play for the next week, right? And so that's the first thing that we're going to be paying attention to. We did bounce off of this support level right here, which was actually previous resistance about, I would say, maybe a month or so ago, November. So mid-November, that was a resistance. And so when we came back down, we actually found support at that same zone when we began to reverse. We broke above the exponential moving average on the daily chart, and the RSI is not extremely overbought, meaning that we do have some potential for upside, right? And so that is actually exactly what we're seeing. So my anticipation and kind of what I'm expecting to see this week is we do push back up, and we're going to push probably up to this 420, 425 zone, which, let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. So this zone right over here, this 420, 425 zone, that's going to be going with this trend, this ascending trend line that we're seeing. We're going to move up to that if we break through this previous resistance that we saw a reversal at, right? So if we see that reversal again, we might see some resistance at the same exact level at this 410 zone. If we do break above it, we're going to see a push up to that 420, 425 zone. If we do see this act as a resistance, we're probably going to come back down and retest this 395 zone as a potential support. But from the technicals that I'm seeing on the daily chart, I do expect to see that we're going to push up to potentially this 420, 425 zone just because of how much room we have before we become overbought right over here. So once we become overbought, we're probably going to reach about this zone right here. And the MACD, we are starting to see it start to converge to the other direction, right? So we're starting to see the convergence happening potentially. So this is probably going to go right around here, a break up to the upside, and then we're going to start seeing a reversal back to the downside once we hit this zone. So that's kind of what I'm expecting for this next week or two. The big news this week, though, is that we do have the CPI report coming out. We're going to jump into that a little bit later. The CPI is coming out, and we're going to talk about some earnings that are happening as well. So the game plan for this week is I kind of broke it down on the daily chart. Let me go ahead and clear everything out. We're going to jump into a 4-hour chart. That way you guys can kind of see where we're at. We are potentially starting to look a little overbought on the 4-hour chart, but again, on the daily chart, that is the bigger picture. So if we're looking for the move for the next week, we're probably going to be looking at the daily chart and playing off of that, right? We're going to be going off of what we see on the big picture, because in the smaller time frames, you know, we do see some ups and downs, but we want to see the bigger play and take advantage of that, right? So again, on the 4-hour, we're not even extremely overbought on the 4-hour either. So the absolute bare minimum is I do expect we come back to up and retest this previous resistance where we saw this rejection initially happening. And then we're going to be at least overbought on the 4-hour chart. But again, on the daily chart, we do still have room to run. So I do anticipate that we're going to be seeing more upside throughout this week, leading into that CPI report that's going to be coming out later this week. So what I'm going to be paying attention to and focusing on is going to be TQQQ, which goes up when the market goes down, and SQQQ goes up when the market goes. TQQQ goes up when the market goes up, and SQQQ goes up when the market goes down. So because we are anticipating that the market is going to be going up, we're anticipating that QQQ is going to be pushing higher leading into the CPI report. We're going to be focusing on TQQQ. And so even at the bare minimum where we previously got rejected, which is going to be that 50 to 52 zone right over here, that's this zone right here. Let's go ahead and grab a measuring tool and just measure what that percentage gain possibly is. So we're looking at about 6% of potential profit if we return to this previous resistance zone where we previously got rejected. If we push even higher, we're looking at 7 to 8+% on TQQQ. Now, what is the risk? We're going to be looking at that previous support right over here to measure our risk and that potential support. The risk, if we do hold all the way to the bottom, is going to be also 6 to 7%. So you're going to really want to have your stop right underneath that exponential moving average. We're looking at the daily chart. So let's go ahead and look at the same charts here. Remeasuring this on the daily chart, because that was a 30-minute chart. Again, to those previous highs, just as we said on the 30-minute chart, 6 to 7%. Now, if you're going to be measuring to that exponential moving average, which is going to be the confirmation for more selling, that's going to be where we're going to be keeping our risk. That's about 2 to 3%. So you do have a 1 to 2 risk reward ratio to potentially take this trade to push up to the upside. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. If we do push higher to that 420, 425 zone, you can obviously tell that, it's going to be a lot higher than that 6%. It's probably going to be about 8 or 9%, if not 10% potential profit on TQQQ. And you're going to want to manage your risk accordingly, right? So that's kind of the game plan. That's where we're at currently with the overall market with QQQ. That's what I'm paying attention to. That's what I'm going to be playing this week, and what I'm going to be trading. And just wanted to share that with you guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys as well. I know the market has started off a little bumpy, but from the technicals that we're seeing, I do anticipate at least a retest of that previous level that we were currently at, and then potentially a sell-off. But we're going to reevaluate once we get to that point. So that's kind of the game plan with that. Now, for the last two things I wanted to jump into, I did want to talk about some of the key economic data that's going to be released this week. And that's mostly covering the fact that we're going to be talking about the CPI that's coming up here on Thursday. But we're just going to run through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday already passed. We didn't really have too much going on, but we did see a nice push up to the upside. So the market is starting to turn bullish after that week-long sell-off. Tomorrow on Tuesday, we don't really have too much important things happening. Nothing notable. Exports and imports, those are just interesting to pay attention to, but they're not going to really affect the overall market too significantly. So, just keep an eye on that, but you don't necessarily have to stress about it or, worry about kind of what's going on with that. Wednesday, what we're looking at is going to be crude oil inventory. So if you're trading any oil stocks, this is going to be an interesting one to pay attention to. So crude oil on Wednesday, and then Thursday is the big day that we're going to be paying attention to. We got continuing jobless claims. We have core CPI month over month. We have core CPI year over year. We have just regular CPI month over month and CPI year over year. We have initial jobless claims, and then we have the 30-year bond auction as well. Federal budget balance, that's going to be an interesting one to pay attention to for December, and the Fed balance sheet as well. So those two things. And then Friday, we have PPI month over month and PPI year over year, and then core PPI and core PPI month over month as well. So just some stuff to pay attention for you guys in terms of key economic data. And the last thing that I want to touch on this week, that way you guys are aware, is going to be the earnings that are going to be released this week. We don't have too many earnings being released this week, but we do have some interesting ones being released on Friday, and that's really what I'm going to be paying attention to, is the finance stocks or the financial institution stocks, which is JP Morgan's going to be reporting on Friday. We also have Wells Fargo reporting on Friday. We have BlackRock reporting on Friday, Citibank reporting on Friday, Bank of America reporting on Friday. And then we also have Delta Airlines reporting on Friday, which is going to be interesting to kind of gauge where the airline stocks are at and how they are doing. So that's pretty much it for this week. I hope you guys had a fantastic holiday for New Year's and for Christmas, and you guys are ready to kickstart this year. Hopefully this breakdown and kind of a recap of where we're at, where we're going, and what we're seeing on the charts was helpful, and in terms of key economic data and earnings. If you guys do have any particular stocks that you guys want me to go over, go ahead and drop them in the channel, in the comments down below. I'm going to take a look at them and potentially drop them into next week's video and kind of go over what I see that from those particular names from a technical standpoint. So again, hopefully this was informative and helpful for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing these videos every single Monday night. We're back for another year. We're going to be going at it. So don't miss out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on next week's video.